Hey everyone, today I'll be looking at the X-Harmony, a $64 mid-tower case by Apevia. Do you really think I'm gonna waste my B-roll on a stupid intro like that? No way. I'm gonna jump straight to the chase. Should you buy this case? Probably not. So let me tell you why. But before that, full disclosure, I did not pay for this case, but I promise I'm not biased in any way. So when Half-Life Alyx was announced, I decided I would build a dedicated living room VR computer. So I started putting together a parts list. I had a bunch of stuff on my Amazon wish list, and this case just so happened to be the one that was on the list because, well, it has a mesh front, it doesn't look horrible, it has a DVD drive, so that's cool, and it starts with the letter A, so it's at the top of the list when you search for cases, even on PC Part Picker. It's at the top of the list. Luckily for me, my legendary uncle saw this case on my wish list and bought it for me for Christmas, so I have no sunken cost, no buyer's remorse, and nothing that will taint my review. But regardless of how good or bad this case is, I am going to be using it. As you can clearly see, I have a computer built into it. I mean, what else am I going to use? This thing? So the X-Harmony is a typical modern mid-tower case. It's got an acrylic side panel, a mesh front for good airflow, and a single 5¼ inch bay. The case on Amazon, and even Apevia's own website, is completely different than the actual design you get. The product pictures all show a case with 3 rubber grommets, a totally different motherboard tray design, and really, who knows what else. The Harmony actually uses the same exact tooling as the Infinity, the Mirage, and the tempered glass Mirage DX, but they all have a slightly different front panel. The side of this case even has the extra mounting holes for a tempered glass panel, so maybe you could buy a panel in the future if you wanted that for some reason, but they aren't used on the Harmony because the factory pre-scratched acrylic side panel just slots in, you know, like a normal side panel would. The inside of the case is mostly spacious. You could probably fit a lot in here. And there's seemingly plenty of space behind the motherboard for cable management, but in reality, it's not a lot. Most of the motherboard standoffs are permanently affixed into the case, but it does come with some extra ones so you can mount different motherboard types. The power supply shroud is also non-removable and stops at the front with just enough room to give you space for a third fan. Around back there are 2 removable 2½ inch drive sleds, and one of them actually blocks access to a hole that would be really useful if you're using a smaller motherboard. There are 2 3½ inch drive bays with plastic sleds near the front of the case. The sleds have absolutely no shock absorbers or vibration dampeners, they just screw into the bottom of the drives. If you don't care about your drives dangling around, you could probably cram like 4 or more SATA SSDs into this space, but I really wouldn't recommend putting mechanical hard drives in this, even 3½ inch ones. The sleds are just really bad. The back panel is surprisingly good, and there's like metal reinforcements along the edges. It does pop in and out in the center, but it doesn't really warp too much. So you can actually put it on your case with, 2 hands instead of 3. The rear of the case is pretty typical for a budget case. It's got those stupid breakaway PCIe brackets that can't be reinserted. It does come with a single replacement PCIe cover, but it's kind of gross. I actually thought it was plastic to begin with because of like how it feels and it's so light, but it turns out it's just a piece of stamped steel, like everything else. On paper, the case supports 3 front intake fans and up to a 240mm radiator. I say on paper because if you have a disk drive installed, it blocks the top fan position, and you can only fit a 120mm rad up front, realistically. This kind of completely negates the point of buying this case, because why would you buy a case that's this big and not put a DVD drive in it, but have a radiator in it too? The whole point of this case, I think, is, to have space for a, double radiator and a DVD drive. I would even go as far to say that this limits your front fans to 1, because if you install a fan in the bottommost section, about 1/3 of the fan will be above the non-removable power supply shroud, so most of your air is going to be pushed into a rat's nest of power cables and not into the case where you want it to be. Yeah, there's some holes cut on the top of the shroud, but that isn't going to provide the case with any airflow at all, especially if you have anything in that drive cage. So to remedy this, I just decided to drill a few extra holes that would allow me to mount 2 fans up front in positions that actually make sense. The fans themselves are not that bad. They retail for about 10 bucks each, and you get 2 of them with the case, so that's cool. According to Apevia, they spin at 1350 RPM and have a reasonable CFM and static pressure. The fans are pretty much silent on their own, so don't even waste your motherboard headers on these, just power them off Molex, like the good old days. Speaking of the good old days, the blue fan I have in this case, in the rear, is actually a 10-year-old Apevia case fan as well. The front I/O is pretty typical for a case in this price range, a single USB 3, 2 USB 2s, headphone, mic, power, reset. I originally thought the PCB was incorrectly designed, causing the left USB port to be kind of off-center, but it turns out the port was just bent out of place and I popped it back in. The power and reset buttons are made out of cheap chrome plastic, personally not my favorite design choice, but they do look a lot better than a lot of other cases on the market. The power button kind of has this spiral pattern cut into it. It's more of a finger exfoliator than anything else. The power and reset buttons both have a really cool illuminated ring around them that looks great, surprisingly. When you press in the power button, it has a really nice tactile click, but the reset button requires a little more force to push down. This is really cool because it makes accidentally pressing the reset button, like, impossible, and shows a human did put thought into designing this case. So now let's talk about the front panel, the low point of the case. The 5 1/4 inch drive pops out by bending some metal tabs, pretty typical for most cases with a DVD drive. The entire front panel is about 1.5 inches thick. This is because the 5 1/4 inch drive needs to come out a little bit to be flush with the front of the case. So originally I thought this case was a full mesh front with removable filters, you know, like any normal case would be. Boy, was I wrong. The main front mesh has a non-removable, very thick foamy filter behind it. In a properly designed case, this would actually be a really good dust filter, but Apevia decided to go with the stupid modern trend of side intakes on the front of this specific case. At least these have removable filters. These so-called filters are also so poorly affixed they would just flex out of the way and filter no dust at all. Not that it matters anyway due to the massive unfiltered hole at the bottom of the front panel. With the thick foam behind the front mesh, all of the air is just going to pass through the side intakes and the hole. So I decided just to remove all of the foam and deal with a dusty computer that has good airflow. I also decided to cut out this big block of plastic that serves no purpose and is probably just leftover material from the injection molding process. While I'm at it, I might as well get rid of this metal that's in front of the fans too. Maximum airflow! This case definitely cuts a lot of corners and is built for profit. I mean, they have like 23 different SKUs, all using the exact same tooling, all sharing some of the issues of this case, or even probably worse ones. Gone are the days of the $30 NZXT Gamma, a case that, in a lot of ways, is on par with this one. Sadly, when it comes to quality, this is probably around what you're going to get no matter what in this price range. Realistically, nowadays, $60 for a case is just not enough. I mean, you can get away with it, but your case isn't going to be nice. There's not really that many cable management holes on the back of the case, so it's kind of like bad to build in. The Cougar MX330G may have been the case I would have bought if I needed a full-size ATX case, which in the end I didn't. The MX330G is only $50, has 2 USB 3 ports, tempered glass, which I don't really care about, and holes that actually make sense for cable management. Not to mention the 5¼ inch drive bay is like actually at the top of the case, where it looks good. I can get over the ugly power button. Personally, I think if I had to buy a case now, I would probably go with something like the Cooler Master N200, the Fractal Design Core 1000, or the Thermaltake Versa H15. The quality of those cases will probably be around the same as this because they're so cheap, but I don't really care, and I do know that those cases will probably have realistic cooling solutions, unlike this one. So is it that bad? No. Especially when you consider some of the other cases don't actually come with good fans, and these fans aren't that good, but they're not horrible, and they're not loud either. If you're willing to do some basic modifications like I did and deal with some dust, I suspect that this case will actually outperform other cases in this price range thermally. But really it's down to your personal preference and if you want to buy better fans. So that's it. That's the X Harmony, and the X Infinity, and the X Mirage, and the X Mirage XD. I made this video because when you type in the name of the case, you don't actually find any real reviews, and I suspect it's because most case reviewers don't review really budget cases. Recently, I almost had a heart attack when I saw Gamers Nexus uploaded like a budget case review, and I'm like, oh my god, did they just review the case that I've been planning to review for weeks? I mean, I even scripted this. I printed out 12 pages and like wrote everything down, but I'm kind of not following the script too much. This is kind of just me talking a lot of the times. It's all improv. I'm very, what's it called? I don't know. That's it. That's the video.